Sure. I'll talk it out.
Yeah, let's just have a conversation.
Track 3.
Better not be fucking Dave Matthews Band.
Okay. Those of you who don't want to be a part of this can leave now.
Derek, please listen to me.
But if you choose to stay, which it seems like you guys are choosing...
Derek, please.
You understand and agree to the following terms and conditions.
Derek!
1.
Derek, this is the virus.
You hereby waive your right
Derek, please.
to your own personal bodily integrity.
This is not you.
2. Per the State versus Neville Reed, my colleague and I will not be held criminally liable for any felony or misdemeanor that you may be a victim of, including, but not limited to, aggravated assault, aggravated battery, disorderly conduct, destruction of property, mayhem, and first-degree murder. And 3, terms and conditions may change or be updated whenever the fuck I want! Consider yourselves notified.
Let's rewind like a VHS. Turn back the time, feel the beat in our chest. Make sure that we never forget. Let's rewind like a VHS. 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 Let's rewind like a VHS. 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 Let's rewind like a VHS. Let's concede that we wanna believe that the past was only a dream, just a place that we never could leave. Follow us on the way to retrieve. VHS, VHS. Let's rewind like a VHS. VHS, VHS. Let's rewind like a VHS. Chest. Make sure that we never forget. Let's rewind like a VHS. 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 Let's rewind like a VHS. VHS.
What up, everyone? DJ Nubis here with my co-host Kevin Lambert from the Entertainment Headquarters, here with the Cinematic Synergy. This time we were reviewing 2021's The Eighth Night. This is a pick that Mr. Lambert had for us. Finally getting around to it. We kind of delaying a lot of stuff going on in December. So
yeah,
we will officially call that Godzilla month, because it was his time during that time. So.
Yeah, he reigns supreme over the month of December, Godzilla, and obviously we've had this plan for a while, but obviously work, life in general gets in the way, in between trying not to get stomped down by Godzilla himself.
Yeah. It sounds like it's going to be more Godzilla, because I cannot wait for the Blu-ray for -1 to come out. I'll be watching that about 100 more times. So The Eighth Night is a horror film directed by Kim Tae-hyung. Cast consists of Lee Sung-min, Park Hae-jun, and Kim Yoo-young. Plot is: with prayer beads in one hand and an axe in the other, a monk hunts down a millennial-old spirit that's possessing humans and unleashing hell on Earth. So, kind of tell us, what was it about this film that made you want to check it out?
Well, as lately, as you know, Hollywood has not really been producing much things that are got much interest for me. So I've been kind of, looking into other forms of entertainment, other like genres, other like areas. So obviously, I've been watching a lot of like more Korean programming. And I just happened to be looking through the list of things on Netflix, and this just came out to me. I had just finished watching Kingdom, which is a zombie period piece, which if no one's seen it, I do recommend it. And this was like part of the recommendations list after I finished that particular show, and I started watching it, and straight off the bat I was interested because you see like right off the bat like a backstory telling you about these two demons and the red eye and the black eye and things of that nature. So
yeah, it's pretty interesting because as you said, Asian cinema right now is pretty good. I mean, for the most part, it's they're doing a lot of good content. We talk about stuff like Squid Game and Train to Busan and stuff like that. So they've been putting out some really quality stuff. So easy to see why Hollywood right now. Now, then we just talked about Godzilla -1. I mean, it's without a doubt made my best film of the year. So it's like, it's really kind of funny how Hollywood is kind of shooting themselves in the foot with some of the stuff they're putting out. I mean, they have a few good movies, obviously, but most of it's just falling through the cracks. But as you brought up, the film here basically starts out with like this back history of what's considered the red eye and the black eye. And the red eye is basically entrapped into this like little case by a Buddhist monk. And
give me 1 second. The cat's about to jump onto the laptop. This is what happens when you're doing things live. I'm just going to kick it out the bedroom because I don't want any interruptions.
Gotcha. I'll just keep explaining. So, anyway, the Buddhist entraps the red eye in like this sarcophagus, small like container sarcophagus, and for a period of centuries, this thing lies in dormant in the middle of this desert. I think it's called a Saria casket or something that it's entrapped in. And eventually, I forget the name of the guy's name. It's our Professor Kim Jun Chiao. So his goal is to try to prove that the red eye exists. Like it's just, the demon red eye is basically like a way to a portal to hell on Earth. So he's trying his best to prove that it exists. So he eventually in the desert, he's an archaeologist and comes across it, gets it. And at first he tries to present it as, hey, this is what I've been talking about, but he gets kind of mocked by the scientific community. They're not taking him seriously. And so this kind of leads him down a dark path where he's kind of isolated, he's pissed off.
And he kind of loses his marbles a bit. He's that obsessed with proving his theory that this red eye and the whole legend is true. That he kind of goes off the rails a bit, and he then decides, if in the first few minutes, this is all happening by the way in the first few minutes where you get this flashback of the past 2,000 years ago where you see it all take place. And then it flashes forward to like what you say, to like the border where he's digging up this thing in the middle of the sand. I think it's in between Pakistan and somewhere else. And then when he's in his apartment and he's basically losing his mind, and I think he's about to commit suicide because he wants his blood to awaken the red eye. And just when he's about to do that, because he originally slices his hand with a knife, and he didn't think it works, and I think he's on the verge of just basically giving up when suddenly the red eye finally appears. And that's where things start to kick off with this particular film and story.
So then in Guangzhou, Beyonce, I don't know if I pronounced that right as far as the country, but Haijung, the protector of the black eye, realizes the red eye is awakened. And it's kind of weird how this particular thing works, because at first you don't really see it, but then as the movie goes along, we realize that it sort of it possesses the person it's with, and when it exposes itself, it kind of like shows an eye like out of their cheek. So
Yeah, there was even one point, I'm sure, where you see somebody looking like through a gap, and they've got the ear to the side, and the actual eye, it pops out at the side of the head, where that above the ear, which I thought was quite creative.
Yeah. So yeah, I think our main protagonist here is this guy here, and he's the monk that carries like an axe and beat rosary beads. And so he takes this other kid, younger one, with him to go search out for the red eye. Like they're on this quest now. And at first I could never really figure out, because like I said, you and I we saw this movie a while back, and so remembered some of the more finer details a little hard. But the kid was initially taking a vow of silence initially, but then as time goes along, he can't do it. He just starts talking, breaking whatever Buddhist rule that the other guy had. But it's like a non-issue really overall. But they start seeking out the red eye, where it's kind of jumping from body to body, and they're finding like bodies left behind from what's going on. But eventually it jumps into this little lady here, who does a nice job of making it very creepy on how the mannerisms of what the demon is doing is possessing her. And so here's the scene. I took the audio out, but this scene is kind of like one of my favorites. I'm going to get into a little bit more about how I feel about this particular part of it. But here's a little scene where he's finally catching up with her, and then she looks normal, and starts running away, trying to evade the Buddhist or the monk, and comes across this cop here who she's gonna hope that will take care of her problem. Now here's the funny thing about this movie for me. Now I can accept the whole like jumping body to body thing, but I kind of felt like I would have liked the demon to kind of stay in this girl more, because I thought she was the best representation of the demon. Like it was kind of like this innocence, and then you can see she has this dark side that starts popping out whenever, I don't know if this is like sniffing or what, then the evil grin. And of course, we'll start seeing like the eye and all this other stuff that just gets really weird.
One thing I will say though about this, like that scene there is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But the one thing I really liked as well is how it's the actual acting of the actress and the actor there, is how they can switch from being just scared and playing like, I guess like the victim kind of thing, running away, and then can just switch it on and come across very unstable and frightening and creepy all in a matter of a second. And the same with the detective there, who later on in the second half of the film, who then basically becomes possessed and becomes basically the villain of the second part of the film. As you're seeing there, when he's approaching, he's very like, I would say he's like a geeky character. He's like, he's the bookworm detective. But then once he gets possessed, he switches it up and he completely changes himself around. And it's so well done how they did that. And as you've seen, the effects are pretty decent within the film as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so really at this point of the film, they're still like chasing, because now the red eye is able to switch body to body. So now it's no longer in the girl, but in the cop. And they keep continuing to hunt down the spirit. And my recollection of like, the idea is to stop it so that it doesn't open a portal to hell. And they end up in this forest, this big forest area.
Yeah.
And, there's this big confrontation.
Well, if you remember, if I go back slightly, when I tell you the opening monologue, when I told you the story, there was, I think, 8 pillars, and each pillar's like a person, and the last pillar is the Virgin Girl. And so for the Red Eye to open the portal, it has to wipe out each of the 8 pillars. And so that was back in like 2,000 years ago, but now this is skipping forward to like, I think it's based in 2005, I might be wrong, because this film is a few years old now. But the great thing about this is it is like a possession film. It is like, you know, a demon film, but it's also like a mystery film. And there is, as you've seen in that clip, you have the detective with the red coat on who becomes a villain, but he has a partner who is like another detective. And at the beginning of the movie, you saw them trying to solve all these murders or suicides, and it's all linked up to the events that are transpiring, which I found very, very interesting, how they kind of made it like a true crime story mixed in with the demon element, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, and of course there's what they call like the 7 pillars, and so I think that is that the representation of each person that's possessed. I can't remember because there has to be like a certain standard that has to be met, like a virgin and stuff like that. So
Yeah, the Virgin's the final pillar, and that's the last one that has to be basically sacrificed for this portal to reunite the red and the black eye. And if they reunite together, then it opens the portal and allows like the demon from hell to rise up to the earth.
Yep. And so eventually, you know, they start kind of getting towards the end where they're having this final confrontation, and like there's this battle where the demon keeps jumping from person to person. So I think it does end up ending the young kid. Am I right?
I think so. Yes.
And then like the main character is gonna try to sacrifice himself by cutting, you know, releasing his own blood or something. Like there's something with the blood that the Red Eye can't resist, and something like that.
Yeah, and in between that happening and a little bit before that, you kept on seeing this young girl, and there's a twist with the young girl, which is all interconnected. She was, I think, the adopted daughter of the professor who you see at the beginning of the movie, who basically she obviously she's been adopted by him after being abused. And what ends up happening is no one believes him. They think he's, you know, crazy. He's a nutcase. And I think she must commit suicide, which you don't see on screen, but it's all linked back. I think that's how the Red Eye first escaped. Because she committed suicide, and then from that point on, she's been a ghost all this time throughout the film. And the young monk who's with the older monk who's basically following him around as like his apprentice, he kind of bonds with the female ghost, which obviously then all links up where we get to the end with the final battle.
Yeah, and obviously the idea is to reconnect or reunite the Black Eye with the Red Eye. And there's a moment where, and I'm bad with the names, unfortunately, but the characters are basically, they got like one guy has a real talisman that protects them from being possessed, but then there's a moment where he's actually, I think it might be with the young kid, like sort of like draws like a talisman on his face or something, then takes the demon into himself and then asks to be killed so that he can kill it. But the demon's pretty crafty. But I think he ends up still killing him and then entrapping the Red Eye back into the casket at that point. I think one of the things that kind of like threw me for a bit of a loss in this was the whole girl in chains and the spirits that were like, it was like almost like a whole like side story to that. Like you said, it has like an added dimension to what's going on. but it's a bit confusing. So like you really don't get much information, at least until the end, of like what her connection is to everything. But it kind of gets lost in translation throughout the film up to that
Yeah.
point.
It's similar to another film I think we did a review on, where basically it's like two films in one.
Yeah.
So you've basically it's basically where, you know, it's trying to be this very crafty psychological kind of true detective thing, where you've got the murders or the suicides and trying to link up the dots to see, especially why all these murders or suicide are happening within like the same area. And the other plot is obviously these two monks, the main monk and I guess his sidekick, who are trying to discover where this demon's gonna pop up next, and finding, you know, stopping each of, like you said, the 7 pillars from being killed.
Yeah.
And then, of course, linking it up all together and connecting the dots at the end.
Yeah. So basically, like I said, once he's got the eye back into the casket, he returns to the border of India to return it to where it was unburied. And then again, we see where I think his name's Cheong Seok. That's the young kid, the boy that we were talking about. And A-Run, I think. Which one is A-Run? Is he the... No, she's the girl. She's the one in chains. So she's the one with the secret, right?
Yes. And Aaron, wasn't he the detective that got possessed, the villain?
Okay, so E-Run, she's the girl. And
Aaron is the girl with the secret, and then you've got
Kempo Tay is the detective. Okay, so
yeah.
So she's towards the end. She's appears before Cheong Seok and offer up a hand, and I guess as her spirit grabs the hand, the chains on her ankles are unchained, and I guess they say that kind of frees her. But I guess this is where my confusion is. Why is she even in chains to begin with? I don't remember.
I just remember the flashbacks at the beginning,
Right.
where she was being very much abused. She was trapped and held captive in a room, and obviously, I think it's like more like a metaphor thing, the chains, because she went through an abusive time growing up, and then when she was adopted by the professor, she kind of was chained to him in a way, because he was obsessed with his work, obsessed with this legend. I'm assuming she committed suicide. This is what I got off it.
Okay.
Which you didn't see on screen, because he was going to kill himself, I think, to release the demon.
Yeah.
But then, obviously, he slit his hand and the blood touched the inside the box, but nothing happened. So I'm assuming when he did that, that didn't work, and when he was about to kill himself off screen, she had actually killed herself, which released the demon. So she was chained to the demon and the talisman in the box.
Gotcha.
So, and then of course at the end, she had a horrendous upbringing. She was chained to the professor and his obsession. And I'm assuming it's a metaphor that she's finally at peace and she's no longer tied to anybody, and she's no longer under the influence of the demon, because after she does kill herself and suicide, she became a ghost and she was trapped within that apartment block. And obviously, what was going on, another thing, when we mentioned the true detective side, there was all these suicides and murders, and it turns out all these suicides and murders were happening within this online group. And I think the online group was set up by that professor because he was wanting them to be the 7 pillars, and every time one of them killed themselves or was murdered, it was getting stronger and stronger to allow the demon to be free. But the last one was the Virgin.
Yeah. So, and I love how you explain that, because really, I watched it one time and then I kind of started watching it again. But this is probably where the failure of the movie comes from me, because the concept is amazing. And as you said, the special effects are very good considering what, they're dealing with CGI and whatnot. So as far as like I said, I would have enjoyed, see, the thing about the girl, like, the one that does like the funny face, like I would have kind of liked just to have her be the one that was running around being chased by them, because I thought that really she did a good job with that, and she made the whole atmosphere of the movie creepy. But the fact that you can't really understand like why initially when the professor tries to release the red eye, like he has these vials of blood, dumps them in, cuts himself, puts his own blood in, and nothing happens. At first you're thinking, well, maybe the eye's just kind of soaking it up and then eventually pops out. But the way you explained it in relation with the girl, because like I was always confused about what the girl even represented. Like and I think that's part of the problem with the storytelling, because you don't really understand who she is, why she's there, or who she's connected with.
I think that's when this is the thing when I said about the true detective side of it. When you had like the murders and the suicides and you were trying to connect the dots, and the dots are clearly there, people who are killing themselves are being murdered are the 7 pillars.
Yeah.
And because the professor set up this group that was meant to be helping people who had tried to attempt suicides. And I think it was his way of luring people in to do these things to prove his theory right.
Oh, okay. So the girl that you said, that was his daughter?
So, yes, so you see a flashback where
she was probably a virgin, so he probably chained her because that's what he was going to use for the final pillar.
Yes.
Okay. See, now it makes sense.
But then where it becomes like a true crime thing, you're trying to work out the mysteries of this girl as well as the mystery of the murders and the suicides at the same time as watching these two monks trying to stop this demon from being released. And you see a scene with her where he's sitting there, the young monk who's befriended her, and he takes her to this hidden place near the temple. And the monk walks in, the older monk walks in, and he goes, "Who are you talking to?" And there's no one there. And that's when you actually realise she's a ghost.
Yeah.
And then it shows you how she become a ghost, and you see a scene with the professor where he's standing there with a knife in his hand, and then you see her. And there's this, it says, because you love somebody, even though you don't believe it, you go along with it and you believe it anyway. And then the next thing you see, there's that image of her standing in the sand with that long flowing white dress. Right. And it's pure white. The next thing you see is blood dripping down her dress. So for me, that's basically signalling she committed suicide. At the same time, he was going to kill himself. So for me, that happened off screen, probably in another room. Because you see her looking at him like with this disturbed look on her face, like she's upset. She wants to help him, but you don't know how. And then the next thing you know, it takes you basically back to the beginning when the red eye first appeared. So that was like the mystery of how the red eye emerged out of the blood.
Yeah, so like that's good to know, because that, like, my score is a lot lower, but once you've explained like some of that, it kind of raises a little bit. Now, granted, this isn't a movie I'm going to really go back to, I don't think, because when I first watched it, even despite some of the confusion, like I didn't find myself being totally terrified or anything with it. I still appreciate, like, the fact that you were able to explain that helped me out a lot with it, because that's part of my hang up was I just couldn't understand like where the movie was going in terms of like the characters and like why we were seeing this person versus this one. And I guess if they had shown at least something when the girl, like as you said, if she did kill herself off screen, that would have been a little more helpful at that time when he's trying to release the red eye. Like at first I'm just like, again, is it just soaking in the blood and taking a minute, or?
Because it is. I get what you mean. It is confusing. You watch that scene, and then the next thing you know, the red eye's just there rolling across the floor, and he's got the knife on his throat, And you think, well, where did it come from? How did it appear? And then obviously you've got to kind of, after that point, unfold the mystery. And basically what I'm saying, that's kind of how I can explain it to myself, of the events of what transpire.
Because that makes total sense. You should have written this movie, or at least directed it. Because, like, I think that's just. I mean, I don't know. People might comment on this if they've seen the movie and maybe they have their own theories or they agree with yours. But it makes total sense, and especially since the professor was so dedicated to try to prove his theory right. So him locking down the virgin girl makes total sense. And if he set up all the other people, that's also makes a lot of sense. So. Well done. Like, I didn't pick up on a lot of that, and I was just like, "What is going on?" But I do like the concept. The concept is very cool. The ending, it was okay. I didn't really wasn't that overly fascinated with it. But anyway, where do you rate it out of 10? Where would you put it?
I'm gonna rate this probably a 5 out of 10 because I like the effects. Like you see, the acting was well done with a lot of the cast members, especially like you see especially the people who got possessed, they went from being nicey nice to suddenly creepy, a bit disturbing at times, and that's what I enjoyed about it the most. Me negatives are similar to yours. It's like what I said before. It tries to be two movies at the same time. A true crime thriller as well as a possession horror movie or horror drama. And I think I was totally thrown through a loop when I first switched it on, because you have this amazing monologue and it's telling you, you've got somebody doing, the introduction, the voiceover, telling you the history of the black eye, the red eye, and I was expecting it to be like a massive demon fight or something. Like, I thought this was going to go down like a fantasy road, and then it went so to a different tone that I wasn't expecting it. So for me, that was negative. And like you say, because they haven't filtered out or fleshed out the plot in a clearer way, like you say, it is going to be hard for people to pick up what's going on. And I think that's a big no-no and a big negative.
Yeah, I think that, obviously we've had movies in our lifetime that are actually pretty good, but you have to watch them multiple times just to pick up on certain things. But that's because those movies are designed in a certain way. I don't think the director was necessarily trying to be that clever. It's just that the editing didn't really match with what was going on.
Yeah.
I will say this, though. You have a great point about, like, you probably feel the same way, is that the detective thriller part was more interesting than the actual paranormal part of it. So it would have been kind of cool if they just skipped the fact that the red eye even really existed. So let's just say the professor was trying to prove himself, but that he was like part of this like cult to try to believe in something. And, the people that were supposedly possessed were more like cult people. So like the girl with the crazy face, she's just part of the cult. Like, it would have been kind of cool just to run with that.
Yeah.
As your main theme. And that would have been kind of interesting. But it's funny because I had the movie down at a 4. Once you explained everything to me in a better way, I pushed it to a 5. So I think, again, we come to about the same conclusion. Now, the cool thing is, not so cool in this case right now because the movie's been written the way it has, but had they done that more thriller approach to it, true detective style, that would have probably pushed it to like a 7 or 8. Like, that would have been a much, much better movie.
Yeah. I just think, like I say, my negative is that when you first press play and you watch it and you have this massive opening monologue where it's basically showing you the paintings and the history and the story from 2,000 years ago, you think it's going to lead into a certain direction, like a fantasy, maybe horror story, but then it gets very grounded and gritty, and then it becomes like a true crime thing. So it's a mixed bag of different emotions and different, how they've thrown it out there, where it didn't really, for me, have a clear direction or what kind of film it wanted to be. And like you say, though, for me, it is, like you pointed out, it's more like a true crime thing than it is a horror fantasy story. And I think with the special effects and showing the eye, you could have done this film without that. But at the same time, they obviously have to, they put that in there to try and make it impactful as much as they could.
Well, yeah, because I think that's what they wanted. They wanted that whole like horror element, but when you explain like just how the professor, how deep thinking he was to try to prove his theory right, that story within itself is very intriguing. So this guy who no one believes in gets so bitter that sure enough he'd go crazy enough to hurt one of his own to prove his theory right. So I just think that if you were to approach it like a cult like thing, so even though the movie is similar in style in terms of using paranormal, did you ever see The Void?
I have, but I've not seen it in a long time. I've probably
It has a similar vibe. So you got the cult of people who believe in this afterlife with horror, and it's got very much of a almost like the Thing, Carpenter's Thing vibe towards the end and all this other stuff. But the idea is you got this cult that are killing people because they're trying to sacrifice them to these gods that they got to open this portal. So, but that movie's done a lot better because it's more straightforward. It tells you exactly what's happening. But yeah, I mean, it was a decent choice. I mean, look, we always like to check out stuff that we haven't seen before, and I don't have any really big grudges against this. But it is a little confusing. It probably takes you a few watches to get the point of everything that's going on.
Yeah, like I say, my negative is it could have been fleshed out better in terms of letting you know what kind of movie it wanted to be, true crime or a paranormal film.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you have coming up on your channel? Anything?
Well, I've just recently filmed my first ever unboxing video. I know that there's a lot of people, as you know, I'm a huge kaiju fan. I don't know what gives it away. But obviously I do have a quite a large collection of collectibles. And so I've been asked a number of times, oh, well, why don't you do an unboxing video? So I've done my very first one. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but that's up on the channel. I'm doing a channel update soon to update people on what I kind of want to do with the channel throughout the course of 2024. 2024, I keep forgetting. And then I'm going to be doing a review for the film Silent Night, which I watched just before Christmas. But like I say, I've never had a day off or stopped. I've just been working. So I need to get my first review of this year up on the channel. And obviously, my biggest plan that I want to do this year, which involves you, is I want to start on my channel, let you be the co-host on my channel of my next new segment, which is going to be called the Retro Classic Movie Show, which basically I will review any films from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s up to the early 2000s. I can pick a film, you can pick a film, and we can have maybe a couple of guests on and just have a good time with that.
Yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun. I love going back to old films and even like just depending on what you pick. Like I'm always game to check out stuff. So that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. What about you? What's coming up on your channel?
So tomorrow I'm doing another When I Raid Alone gaming segment. I'll be talking about a couple of games I've been playing. One's called Werewolf the Apocalypse. The other one is Phantom Blades Executioners. This little bit kind of looks a little bit like Ninja Gaiden a little bit. The werewolf game is very cool. You get to actually be a werewolf. You can transform and fuck people up, all that good stuff. So I'll get into all that, show some clips from that. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the more bitching and whining about Diablo 4 that I always like to fuck with streamers about. They just can't help themselves. They want to trash it, but then they keep playing it. And I'm like, well, quit playing it if you don't like it. You know, so
that is a true fact. Well, stop bitching and stop playing.
I mean, to be fair to them, some of them are like, you know, we want it to do well, but it's like they can't help themselves. They have to keep jumping on the hate wagon. Outside of that, not too much. Although I do know that Mr. Samurai had texted us in a group for the verses, so I think he's bringing that back. I don't know exactly when.
Yeah. Well, I've contacted Samurai myself anyway. He might be joining us. Hopefully, if we can get the scheduling right for the first ever retro classic movie show. So I'm trying to work on that.
Awesome.
Are you going to be doing anything? Because I know you're a huge football fan. Are you going to be doing anything leading into the Super Bowl?
I think Poet and I are gonna do a show probably right after the season's done. So there's another. This is the last week coming up for the football season before they get into the playoffs. Broncos aren't going to be there, but he and I will get together and talk. We're not going to do as many sports segments as we were doing. It's just a little bit too much trying to do that because those shows take about 2 or 3 hours to complete. We just talk about so much shit.
Yeah.
But well, yeah, we'll talk about.
My pick for the Super Bowl is the San Francisco 49ers.
Well, technically, I do like Brock Purdy, but the Ravens right now, in my hometown of Baltimore, are a strong team, but they have a history of choking in the playoffs. So we'll see how it goes. You know, we'll go down and we'll break down the teams involved once it's finalized, and we'll make our picks from there. Who's going to go and win and whatnot. So I'll be looking for that.
Yeah, cool.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for joining me. Do hang around. I'm going to chat with you after we get out of here. For the rest of you, support this man. He's got great fucking content, dude. He's doing really well. I'm so super proud of him. Check out his content and like and support this channel if you like my content.
Yeah, please do. Please listen. I would not be doing this without him. He is a huge inspiration and a great friend who's taught me a shitload of things. I couldn't even get the fucking PC to work, never mind anything else without this man. So please subscribe to the Metal Tavern Radio. You can check out my channel, but for now it's all about him.
No, it's about him.
Metal Tavern Radio and DJ Anubis.
Thank you all for checking us out. If you have any opinions, have you seen the film? You got your own theories, let us know. If not, we will see you next time on the Cinematic Synergy. Take care of yourselves.